Pleasant morning to members of the media. Welcome to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service weekly media briefing. I'm Senior Superintendent Acting Wayne Meister. I'll be your host. This morning we have the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Gary Griffith, and he's joined by Deputy Commissioner of Police in charge of Investigations and Intelligence, Mr. McDonald Jacob, and Deputy Commissioner of Police in charge of Operations, Mr. Anthony James, and they will now discuss a variety of topics. I now hand you over to the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Gary Griffith. So.
Thank you, Mr. Meister. Members of the media, good morning. I think we're just about 2 minutes ahead of time. I'll do as quickly as possible this morning just to give a summary of certain points that I'd like to bring to your attention, and then obviously open the floor for questions. I'd like to spend much more time. I think there'll be a lot more questions from the media than information that I would give to you today. The main thing that I'd like to discuss before we open questions from the media has to do with something that is upcoming in the next few days in Parliament, the debate on the anti-gang amendment bill. And that is going to be debated in Parliament later this week. Now, I'm always very careful not to have the police service involved in any matter that may be deemed as political. However, as the Commissioner of Police, I am obligated to make comments if it is that I can see certain decisions, policies, actions that can be made that can assist in securing lives in this country, or if decisions are not made that can actually affect it and cost it. In 2006, this came about, this anti-gang legislation, and it actually started even by myself when I actually brought it to the attention of the country when I was in another COP. I was in the COP, the Congress of the People. And in the COP at that time, I did immense research, and I saw that this was working in numerous places around the world, more so California, Boston, Detroit, Chicago, New York City. I met with several commissioners of police during that period. And I pushed heavily then because I saw the value of this type of legislation, making it illegal to be in a gang. The then Minister of National Security, Martin Joseph, he picked it up. Thankfully, he listened, and they moved forward with it. And therein lies the concept of how the anti-gang legislation came about. Nothing has changed. In fact, when I did that research in that period, just before it was drafted and approved in this country, if I ask the media, if you can do research and see how that anti-gang legislation is used in North America, in comparison to what we have here, it is chalk and cheese. What we have is a very soft system to deal with gang activity and making it illegal. In certain cities in North America, if persons are previously charged, you cannot even converge on the street with fellow gang members. You cannot be seen in pairs. You cannot make contact with them. You cannot make calls with them. You cannot text messages with them. Certain places and streets are out of bounds. Certain bars and other places of business also out of bounds. That is how draconian, for want of a better word, it is. But it was done for a specific purpose, because in many cities in North America, they started understanding that gang activity was the catalyst towards major crime, not just murders, but rape, kidnapping, money laundering, and so forth. So there were very harsh measures used in North America, and it is still there and still ongoing because they saw the importance of it. So when we come here, the one thing that we have a situation here is that every single decision made, we are always concerned about to infringe on the rights of citizens. But if everyone has their democratic right to say and do what they want, it is going to affect the democratic rights of other citizens, which also includes the loss of life, which is your most fundamental right. And that is the reason why laws are made, why laws are drafted. So as much as we have to make sure that laws will not be drafted that can infringe on your rights for no reason, this is a reason. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we strongly see the importance of this type of legislation. And as I said, in comparison to how these laws are, when I first looked at it, if we did anything even remotely close to what is done in North America, it can play a very big part towards reducing, if not eliminating, gang activity and gang warfare in Trinidad and Tobago. But as I said, the type of laws that they have in North America to deal with anti-gang legislation, it is chalk and cheese in comparison to the soft measures that would be discussed in Parliament. And even these soft measures, it seems that there are questions and people are trying to ascertain the relevance of if it should be done. The fact of the matter is that before gangs came into this country, the homicide rate was less than 100. With the introduction of gang and gang warfare, it has gone 5 times that. And the gang activity has played a very big part, not just for one gang member killing another, but they are also byproducts of gang activity that have also been responsible for the loss of many lives. This has caused the escalation of human trafficking, child prostitution, money laundering, drugs, illegal weapons being imported, and the type of illegal weapons now is no longer just a sidearm, but the gang members are now they've become very sophisticated, where the weapons they have now are assault rifles, 5.56 type round and caliber that can have, and with that effect, with over 35 rounds being fired in just a couple seconds, it is not just the individual who they want to kill that will become a fatality, but also several persons around them, and all of this will become byproducts of gang activity. I have also heard the conversation by some where they stated that because of the high crime rate, what is the value of having this anti-gang legislation? Because if crime is going up, if crime has, well, it is not going up, it has decreased, but because crime is so high, it means that there is no value. Again, I tried my best to stay in my crease and not to get stumped, but I am stumped to understand how anyone could make a comment like that. To make a comment like that, you are now alluding to the fact that, let's give an example, DUI. So because we have legislation to make sure that persons must not be intoxicated and must not be over a certain limit, and that is to reduce persons being intoxicated, driving, getting in accidents, then someone could easily say, well, let us remove that law because persons are still killed driving under the influence of alcohol. And that is the point. So if it is that because persons are still killed but because they drive under the influence of alcohol, is it that we are now going to state that we should remove the law for DUI? Likewise, if it is that we have speed limits and we have tickets and persons are given fines for speeding, but still people speed, is it that we will then say, well, then we should remove the speeding tickets and persons being charged for speeding because people are still committing the crime? The fact of the matter is that crime is a product of opportunity, and if you provide the deterrence, it may not eliminate the crime, but it will greatly reduce the crime. So for persons to state that because there's still gang warfare and there's still murders with gangs, it means we do not see the value of the anti-gang bill. Well, then all the other laws we have, whether it is DUI, speeding, we should also eliminate those laws as well because there's still the situation. The point being is that if you do not have those laws, it will increase the number of those crimes, and that is the importance. So if we do not have that, this present anti-gang legislation, it is going to obviously greatly increase gang activity, crimes involving gang warfare. The value of this anti-gang legislation, and again, when I did the research back in 2005, 2006, is that people will say, well, why bother to shut it down? The reason why gangs are so successful is it's just like a business. If you operate as a silo, you operate by yourself with no support, it is going to be very difficult for you to succeed. Crime is a business. So when criminals operate in silos and they do not have the support mechanism, it makes it difficult for them to have that product of opportunity. On the other side of the coin, if you now have several criminals, they get together, they converge en masse, they now have structure, they have organizational ability, they have capital, they have better funding, they have better intelligence, they are more strategic, they are more tactical, and all of these things is what will cause the success of gangs. So 7 criminals working together is obviously going to be of more value as a team than they working separately. The whole being greater, the sum of the parts, in other words. And by doing that, it means that we need to dismantle the gangs, let them operate in silos. When they do that, they make mistakes. When they become very structured, very organized, they spread their wings, not just with criminal elements in the underworld, but they can now use that situation now by moving into trying to bribe police officers, persons in the criminal justice system, and this has happened worldwide. And this is where I can open my eyes and be honest. And that is why we need to dismantle the gangs, because the gangs have a very good structure. If it is that, let's look at the other side. Everything we do must look 2-3 steps ahead. If we do not have this anti-gang legislation, and it is shut down in Parliament on Friday, a gang leader can now do a full-page advertisement in a newspaper to invite persons to join a gang, because now it is no longer illegal. So it means that you can have an advertisement and ask people to come and join and be a member of my gang. And where would we reach after this? So it is very important that we put a system to prevent this from happening. We always look at numbers. My point being is that in this type of legislation, the importance is not so much the number of persons who have been arrested, but the fact of, by us doing this, it has made it very difficult for gangs to continue to operate without, because of this type of legislation. So it is not, we do not just use the number of persons arrested and charged to see the value of it. This legislation has proven to be very effective by the law enforcement agencies to peg back criminal elements, make life difficult for them to operate as an organized criminal structure. If it is, we do want to look at the numbers. For 6 years ago, from 2013, I was just using from when I was in another place, 2013, just about 6 years ago, there have been 88 persons who have been charged under this type of legislation. Let us do the maths. You're looking at about 14 to 15 persons every year. We'll break it down even more. Every month, at least one person has been arrested for gang activity. You might say that is not much, but if one gang member can be instrumental in killing 6 or 7 persons, do the maths and multiply that 6 or 7 by 88 and see what you get. One life saved is enough. But we are talking about probably hundreds of lives have been saved by us arresting very well-known gang members who hold strategic positions in their gangs that have contributed greatly by us arresting them thanks to this type of legislation that has played a big part in reducing gang-related activity and obviously violent crime. So I'd just like to ask again, from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we are hopeful that persons in another place will do something. What I've always seen very, very interesting, because I was in another place once, and it is amazing that when you sit on the right side of the Speaker or the President of the President of the Senate or the Speaker of the House, you sit on the right side, you see things in one way. And as soon as you go on the left side of the Speaker or the President of the Senate, you get a totally different view. So how does your view of principle, rational logic change only based on when you change sides in Parliament? I got in big trouble speaking about things of putting in with politicians once. But I don't learn from my mistakes. But I have a serious concern. If it is we are here to help this country, we need to be logical. We need to think about things to do it the right way, not which side of the parliamentary bench that you sit. You can't be sitting on the right side of the parliamentary bench before 2015 and you saw the value of the anti-gang legislation. You saw the value of the bail amendment bill. And as soon as you change seats to go on the left side of the Speaker of the House or the President of the Senate, you have a different view. I wish to God, hopefully one day in this country, all politicians, all persons who hold positions in public office can think logical. Just do what is right. Do what is required. What is right is for the importance of this bill to continue. I will now ask, we'll now go into, obviously, the more spicy topics, such as DSS. I know that is coming fast and furious. So just before we go into the DSS, what I've noticed is that many persons in this country, they want change. They want to clean up the country. They want to see the police service do what is right to reduce crime. But there's always something in between. I want you to clean up this country. I want you to reduce crime, but it must not affect me. And I think it's very selfish. I have seen this constantly, especially in the last few months. Go and deal with the Chinese casino and all that, but leave DSS alone. Go and deal with the bars and people assembling in bars because I don't drink, but leave the beaches alone because I want to go on the beaches. Go and harass the people on the beaches, but leave me alone because I want to play football. Leave the footballers alone, but go off. The bartenders will be saying the same thing. So anytime it affects me, if I like to drink and socialize by the bar, the police should leave us alone and do something else. If I love to go by the beach, leave us alone because I want to go by the beach. Go and deal with DSS. You deal with DSS people, they have a problem. So everybody now wants crime to be reduced, but it must not affect them. We cannot operate like that. What the police service is doing, we are not handpicking, we are not witch hunting. We have a number of different concerns. The concerns will vary from the COVID restrictions and also going back to DSS. So when people try to make comments to try to direct the police, to tell the police, leave DSS alone, you are basically now aiding and abetting and condoning activities that can affect national security. The Prime Minister, as the chair of the National Security Council, he was clear when he said it. And I will explain that later on if and when asked, later today. This morning. The fact is that this here, if not dealt with, can cripple this country. And then you'll want to know why the police will get involved. And on many occasions, sometimes we may need to help persons and protect them from themselves because they just do not know better. The DSS investigation, it is amazing. It is amazing that we have citizens. They have been attacking with full force. A minister had 140,000 TT dollars. And that became something of national concern, where every Tom, Dick, and Harry is demanding that she must justify every single cent in that 140,000. And this is a minister with 40 years of experience and service to country. And rightly so, it is to justify. But you want to demand $140,000 justified for every dollar that she has there, how she got it. But a lance corporal in the Defense Force has $22 million, and people have a problem about the police wanting to investigate that. And then we have members of the media, certain arm, I'm not going to express myself today, they are now going to try to put this person as if he's a member of the Fortune 500 club. Every single time they get a chance is to try to boast about him. DSS strikes back, and I am a good businessman and an entrepreneur. They have done everything to express how strong and how great this man is. And that says a lot about where we have reached as a society, where we could look at something and instead of trying to explain to what it is, we have an agenda. Let us stop the agendas and just do what is right. Let's just do what is right for the country. And what is right for the country is for us to monitor and investigate everything. If anyone here in the media or any other citizen had $22 million cash found in their house, they would be all held to pay, and rightly so. A minister had 140,000, and there was a great demand to justify every dollar that she had. But now somebody has a lance corporal in the Defense Force has 22 million, and we must automatically feel that this money is all legit. And it may very well be, but it is the right of the police to investigate this. Let me give you an example how these things work. On many occasions, such schemes, and scheme being the operative word, these schemes like this have been used in other places around the world as a front for money laundering, for drugs, where criminal elements. So if Jacob is somebody else. If anybody is a criminal, a gang member, and he has $500,000 in cash, and he wants to have that put into his bank, he could easily say that is his susu hand. So the person now can send that through him, and he gets a cut. And this criminal who has used hundreds of thousands of dollars that from drug transaction, human trafficking, or whatever, he has now used a system known as a pyramid scheme as a front to launder that money, to now put into a bank account that he can now use to purchase things more sophisticated and get the value of what he has received because of crime. That is how important this is. And I'm not saying about this, but I am stating that if somebody has $22 million, the police by all right must investigate. And anyone who is questioning that, you need to question your ethics, your character, and how your parents brought you up. Because somebody has 22 million, you're saying the police must not investigate it because we must automatically believe that every dollar in that 22 million came from, was it lying out poor people? We do not know. We suppose half of that. Let's use another example of another scheme. We must always take it that every time we find money now is because of poor people. Is the poor people going to be the excuse as a cover for something that could be wrong? It can't be. So as I said, when criminals, they have used such schemes, they have set up such schemes all over the world, and they've used it as a front to wash money from illegal means. And then they use that now to be able to take part in other types of activity. So for the persons who have a concern, and I challenge you to tell me that you know that every single cent of that 22 million has been legit. And when it is that if it is that something can be illegal, it allows criminal elements now to build such a franchise that they can buy more drugs, that they can sell drugs outside schools that can affect your children, they can buy more sophisticated weapons that can now kill your family members or kidnap them, and they can use the extra funds now to buy and pay off more police officers, more senior officers, and even members of the criminal justice system. That is what the Prime Minister is speaking about when he says something like this, if not nipped in the bud immediately, can cripple the country. So I ask, instead of everyone, because we do know that every single person now has been a law enforcement expert, because they feel that they know. I have just given you an example to show why it is important that the police must investigate this matter. And if every cent in that 22 million has been by legitimate grounds of hard-earned poor people, fair enough. But no one here can come forward and tell me that they know that every single cent has been from hard-earned, law-abiding citizens who are poor people. And that is what we have to do. We have a right to deal with this immediately. I will now ask DCP Jacob, just to clarify, we cannot say much more. Obviously, this is a matter that is still being investigated, but DCP Jacob, as the front line for this investigation, will now speak to you.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Thanks very much, Commissioner of Police. As you are all aware, that the drug susu investigation commenced on Tuesday, the 23rd of September. The investigative team consists of officers from the Professional Standards Bureau of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and our Financial Investigative Branch of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. This team is, in fact, supported by 2 investigators from the Barbados Police Force and also an officer from the United Kingdom. They arrived in Trinidad and Tobago in mid-September, and they are supporting us in this investigation. There is also virtual support from investigators from the United Kingdom. The investigation is being conducted in 2 main areas. One, dealing with the police conduct and supporting law enforcement officers on the 22nd of September at Catalina Drive, Phase 1, La Joquita, Arima, and also the conduct of these officers at the La Joquita police station on the said date. The investigation also involved our main subject, the DSS Susu investigation, and Karen Clark. During the investigation, other agencies were consulted, such as the Security and Exchange Commission, the Financial Investigative Unit, and the Officer of the DPP. Additionally, several persons were interviewed. Reports and statements were taken from officers of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and also the Defense Force and other financial institutions. The team is continuing their rigorous approach to this investigation, and additional data, information, and evidence is being gathered. All efforts are being made in pursuit of bringing this investigation to a conclusion. Recently, an officer of the Police Complaints Department of the Police Service also joined in the investigation. The 4 police officers who were suspended continue to be on suspension, and as you are aware, recently the main subject, Karen Clark, was sent on vacation leave by the administration of the Defense Force. However, there are at present 3 matters engaging the court under Section 38 of the Proceeds of Crime Act as it pertains to this investigation. 1, a seizure of 655,000, which was seized on the 25th of August, a seizure of 707,500 seized on the 22nd of September, and a seizure of 6.4 million that was seized on the 27th of October 2020. Also, on the 22nd of September, an officer of the Defense Force who was found with a ranged pistol at the said address was charged for using a firearm contrary to the license and possession of ammunition. There are other aspects of the investigation which will be completed within the next 2 weeks, and the DPP will be consulted for further advice as this investigation proceeds. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Now, before I just move on to operations ongoing as it pertains to COVID, and then we'll open questions to the media, I just want to clarify. It seems that there's something with this pyramid scheme, and this made people want to know why the police getting involved in this. Again, sometimes we need to protect persons from themselves for them to understand a pyramid scheme. This pyramid scheme has, we could look at from, you have HCU, CLICO, the Adam Stanford, and I asked you to type something called India/Sahara. I think it's India/Sahara. Tens of millions of persons in India lost their money because of the same thing, the same situation. What I'm going to do now is just to show, this will just take a few minutes, and to show to the country how a pyramid scheme works, because it seems that people are not aware. The pyramid scheme is one that is directly designed to benefit those at the top of the scheme. As you see here, that members at the bottom, they will lose their FT investment, while the top pocket will benefit. Eventually, the new members in pyramid schemes, they duck and run. And they leave, and when they run out, the entire scheme will collapse. The scheme is designed to benefit top management alone. And again, let's go to the other. This here is it as clear as day. Just pass it. Picture. Yeah, no. No, next one. That one will go. Take a look at this. This is how a pyramid scheme works. I want to clarify this to the country once and for all, so that persons who are trying to say that this is beyond an end all. You start with 6 persons. These 6 persons will now make, for them to make $60,000 each, they must find 36 persons. Fair enough. So 6 persons will get 60,000 by just finding 36 persons. Good. 36 persons, for them to benefit now, they need to get $360,000, 60,000 each. For them to do that now, they need to find 216 people. Good. You then move on now to when you get now to level 4. Level 4 is the important level I want to show to us right now. Level 4, for 1,296 persons to benefit. That means you need to find $12,960,000 for each of them to get the 5 times the amount. So for these 1,296 to get their 6 times their whatever, you're looking at 12 million. This is where we are right now in Trinidad and Tobago as it pertains to this top pyramid scheme. Because these people now need to find 7,776 persons for them to all benefit to get their 5 times the amount. When this happens, this is when it will start to collapse. So the people who are benefiting here are those on social media who are speaking the most, because they have seen that if it is I give $10,000, $10,000, $10,000, $10,000, I will get my 60,000. But for you to get $10,000, when you deposit 10,000, you get 60,000. It means 6 other poor people families are going to lose $10,000. And that is the point. And that comes from down here. Because when these individuals now, when these 7,700 cannot get 46,000 people, these people are going to lose their money. And all of these will lose their money. And then it goes down. This year, when it reaches this level, this is more than the world population. This is more than the population of the United States. The pyramid scheme will collapse eventually. And then when it will collapse, these people here would have benefited from the money from those below. So if you reach here and they get their 60,000, 46,000 people are going to have lost $10,000 each for these 7,000 people to benefit. That is how a pyramid scheme works. So people who are ignorant that continue to try to speak praises of a pyramid scheme, it is because of your ignorance in maths, in accounting, and understanding business. A business does not work by you just feeling like you put 10,000 and I get 60,000. It shows greed, it shows stupidity that persons in a country believe that if I get 10,000, I put 10,000 and I get 60,000, the police is stopping me from doing that. The police is preventing that from 5 other families now having to suffer because of your greed, that you figured life is so easy that if I put $10,000, I will get 60. But if we have reached here now, that is where we would have seized the 22 million. So it has reached this proportion. Anytime it gets past here, 46,000 citizens would have lost $10,000 each to benefit these persons. And guess what happens? This is where the police will now get in. Because guess what these 46,000 people will now do when they've lost their $10,000? Who do you think they'll come to? The police service to report fraud. Because now they would have deposited $10,000 in the hope that they will get 60,000, but they can't find this amount. And then they would have all lost their money because of the greed of these here who benefited, who are those who are fighting the cause because they know the benefits that they get. So I just want to clarify this once for all. The pyramid scheme benefits the first 4 levels or 5 levels. This has happened 2 or 3 times in this country, and it cracks right here. It cracks between level 4 and level 6. Here's where it will collapse. So the people who are benefiting now have been all of these 4 layers. When you look at 22 million, divide that by 10,000. If my math's correct, that's 2,200 persons have deposited 10,000. So they're benefiting and they're hoping. But they need to get 46,000. And when you don't get the 46,000, that is where it is the 46,000 will then lose. So I hope this will clarify this once and for all as it pertains to the pyramid scheme by drugs, Susu, using a pyramid scheme. Just before I now open to the media, just want to again deal now with pertaining to dealing with operations. Throughout the COVID regulations, what we have noticed, again, I wish to thank the public for their great degree of maturity. Unfortunately, persons, as I said, people want us to reduce crime only if it benefits, if it doesn't affect them. I'm looking again at the bars. People are trying to complain and say that the bars, there's nothing wrong with if it is that you go outside the bars to consume alcohol. But when the government made a decision as a regulation that you cannot have persons in the bar, so if a bar can hold 50 persons and now you're not allowed in the bar, but the 50 persons will now go on the pavement and now they will squeeze themselves tighter than China doubles. What do you expect? It is going to be even worse than if especially 50 of them remained in the bar. They would have been spread out much more. So the police service, we are not just being troublesome. We are trying again to protect you from yourself. And also, we are here to ensure that the law is enforced. Because under the new public health regulations, para 4, H and I, because people, even bar owners, they do not read the regulations, H and I states that you are not allowed to consume alcohol in the bar or on the precincts of the bar. So people are not reading and they're going on social media making all their comments because social media has always been an avenue for persons to give a view without any knowledge of the subject matter because they have a voice. And their voice is not based on logic, it is not based on fact, it is not based on regulations. So we're here to clarify and ask persons, we are just the messenger. We are just here to enforce the law, not to justify or to explain. If there's a law, we have to ensure that it is enforced. And that is what we are doing as it pertains to the bars, as it pertains even to beaches. And people need to decide which side of the fence you're on. So if you want to continue to attack and condemn the police service for doing our job to try to protect persons from making sure that their lives can be saved, well, you know which side of the fence you're on. We went to the beaches on Sundays, and again, persons were upset. Persons were actually upset because the police were out there trying to ensure that the regulations would be enforced. We have seen it in certain places in North America and Europe when beaches were opened and it became a free-for-all. There was a spike in persons being found positive. What I did notice when I went to Maracas on Sunday, I really wasn't sure if it was Maracas or Caracas, because it seemed that there were more persons that I had to speak Spanish to, and when I kept telling them no mas, they kept asking me what this has to do with Roberto Duran against Sugar Ray Leonard, and I said no, not no mas, no mask. So it seems that there's been a mass of persons Spanish, and I have to learn Spanish the next time I go to Maracas, because I really thought it was Caracas. And going back to that, which was very interesting, is that I could see a member of parliament in another country trying to discredit our country based on our policing techniques, which was very interesting because that member of parliament, I don't know if she ever saw video footage of her military, how they treat with their own citizens in their own country. But you want to speak about Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, how we deal with citizens from Venezuela, which not understanding the fact that these persons were breaking the law, they were being arrested, and they tried to resist arrest. And this is something that I intend to deal with, in that it cannot continue where we have police officers trying to restrain persons and you believe that it is your right now to retaliate. When that happens, you're going to damage a police officer or you're going to damage yourself. With immediate effect from Monday, every police officer is going to have pepper spray. And trust me, it is not a nice feeling. I experienced it a couple months ago in an operation where the police officer was trying to spray someone and he pointed it in the wrong direction and sprayed it on me. And for a few hours, I was kind of out of it. So we need to please, I ask the public, please, there's something comply and then complain. So again, the same way it is that the member of parliament in another country was criticizing our police officers. The fact is that when their military gives a directive, the same individuals who were trying to resist arrest from the police would have listened because they knew it would have been much more than what you saw with our police officers. So before you decide to criticize my country and my police officers, check yourself first in your own home before you criticize us. The pepper spray would be issued. There are also tasers that have been issued for hundreds of police officers. They would be trained. And the reason for this is not just for us to spray people. We wish it would give us no pleasure in doing so. But we must have a minimum use of force policy in this country to ensure that police officers can be protected without the use of the firearm. And if you, again, it goes right back to my point of where have we reached as a society. Because we've reached a point now where people are videotaping something like this, laughing and screaming and applauding when someone has escaped police capture. That is what we have reached to. And then you're hearing someone say, they can't do anything, they can't shoot you. Okay, then you're correct. Because before we introduced pepper spray and tasers, the police would have been left with very little, and they cannot use their firearm because that is a last resort. I have put all the systems in place to ensure minimum use of force policy, and it has commenced with first verbal persuasion by the officers speaking to the individual. You then move to the body cameras being issued for every police officer by early next year to make sure this will protect the police officers from being wrongfully accused by the lady in the towel that keeps bawling only too wicked. And then now he will have the evidence to show that what she's saying is not true. She keeps showing up all the time. She keeps showing up. And then you have the radio for communication for backup. When you have numerical superiority, it immediately downplay individuals who feel they want to retaliate. You then move to the bateau. The bateau is no longer going to be used in the days of nowadays. The days when you are a young police constable, it's no longer a butu, it is a bateau. The bateau is now being used not for pain compliant, but to control the individual, to bring them to the ground. I have to look at some very serious training with my police officers because I am not impressed with the type of tactics that I have seen with police officers dealing with persons resisting arrest. The first thing you do with persons resisting arrest is to get them to the ground immediately, and you're doing that to prevent yourself from being hurt and the individual. They stand up in this little tussle while standing, and it means that there must be proper training in unarmed combat for a police officer to understand how to restrain someone so that person will not be hurt. And it cannot continue with an individual just continuing to do what he's doing, and then the crowd, the mob in the back, cheering him on and gives him the perception that he's doing right. So after the battle, you'll then have the pepper spray, you then have the tasers, and then you have the firearm as the last resort. This is going to greatly minimize situations where persons have been shot at by police officers because they were left with none of the tools I mentioned because they moved from verbal persuasion straight to the firearm. But the officers can and would use pepper spray and tasers if required. A situation like that would have warranted that situation. We cannot have persons continuing to attack and resist arrest with police officers. And again, we as a society, people need to decide which side of the fence you're on. People they were applauding and they were pleased with a situation like that. I do not know how your parents brought you up, but it's a total. I could never see myself, police officers, trying to restrain someone and you are applauding because the person is escaping and fighting. That is where we have reached as a society. Every citizen needs to decide which side of the fence you're on. Are you the side of the fence and trying to deal with good, trying to deal with removing criminal elements, or trying to applaud persons for breaking the law? Finally, again, the persons that I have seen speaking about it, when you look at social media, it goes with the character of the individuals. There was one called Wet Mango Head, Orange Head Salad, Prince Grapefruit. So that kind of sums up the individuals who have situations of being pleased of going against the police service. We have seen persons playing contact sports. Just to clarify, before I hand over to DCP James, Deputy Commissioner of Police for Operations, people are trying to look at different parts of the regulations conveniently. You can't look at the part of the regulations to state that no assembly of more than 10 so that you will play football. I would love to be playing football at this time. But the regulations also state no contact sports. So please, if you all can restrain, find a way to prevent it. Anything in public place that you cannot have contact sports. That includes football, hockey, rugby, basketball, and so forth. It is unfortunate, but it is mandatory because it is now part of the regulations. Do not look, because people are now trying to play three-a-side football, saying that is less than 10. It doesn't work that way. You have to look at all aspects of the regulations, and you need to adhere to it. And now, before I open questions to the media, I'll ask DCP James just to give us an update as to what is going on as it pertains to operations throughout the country, inclusive of making sure that persons adhere to the COVID regulations.
Pleasant day, each and everyone. Thank you, Commissioner. Clearly, just to reinforce what was said by the Commissioner of Police, it tells us a story. Clearly, the public of Trinidad and Tobago are not taking a serious view of the COVID-19 virus. The health authorities have partnered with TTPS, mainly to enforce the regulations that are passed in the House of Parliament. And we must recognize that the regulations have been designed and enforced to protect us. One recognize that COVID-19 is indeed a crisis, and we have the mandate to ensure that crisis doesn't develop into a catastrophe. We have been engaging with persons, we have been campaigning from several fronts to have persons adhere to the COVID regulations. As the Commissioner mentioned, we are having a task to treat the persons who are in themselves seriously intent on frequenting the bars, lying outside the bars, and creating the sort of disruption that we are trying to avoid. So because of this, the operations section of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service will be engaged in several strategic operations, taking us from the COVID-19 straight on to Christmas. We will be targeting the bars and the beaches using different resources at our disposal to ensure that persons comply. As you may be well aware, that the ticketing system is well enforced. We have had several persons ticketed for breaches of the COVID regulations, and this will continue aggressively. We have a mandate to robustly pursue this initiative to the hilt with a zero tolerance approach. Clearly, persons need to understand the seriousness of the COVID-19 virus. If one looks at the news media coming out from the United States of America, one can clearly see that clearly there's a drastic escalation in the COVID-19 virus spread across America. And one could attribute that particular spread and that escalation to the breakdown and the lack of adherence to COVID rules and regulations, most important being the wearing of the mask. And we have been having a prevalence of persons breaching that particular protocol. Persons are blatantly refusing to wear the mask, or if they do wear the mask, they're wearing it below the chin, as though that is how it's supposed to be worn. When we last checked, your mouth and your nose was never placed under your chin. So there'll be an aggressive approach to treat with that particular issue. And we're kind of asking persons to adhere to regulations for their own good of their brother man, their family members, friends, and other persons of this national society. We are seeing clearly that other areas are being impacted because one will recognize that when you have an increase, it impacts the health sector. It impacts the healthcare workers. We have been engaged in several issues where persons return nationals from abroad. We are engaged in escorting these persons to the step-down facilities, and we have to monitor these facilities. So that's also stretching the resources of the TTPS to a further extent. We also have the issue of persons who are self-quarantined, who are also breaching the COVID regulations, finding themselves out of their homes, into malls, into business places, lying on the streets, and engaging in all sorts of recreational activities which they should not be a part of. Why should the police service be forced to treat persons who exhibit indiscipline who are adults? Clearly, we are not clearly understanding what COVID-19 clearly means. It is a death sentence. We have no indication clearly that you will survive or you must survive COVID-19. And the initiative should be put to the public to ensure that they comply with the instructions and the rudiments of the healthcare regulations. It's a difficult task for the TTPS to enforce. We are stretched to the limit. What we would also like to see happening is that the public partner with the police. You see other persons next to you, around you, not wearing a mask, ensure they put a mask on. it will protect you and also protect them. But if you allow it, you are also condoning something that could kill you. So clearly you need to engage. With the upcoming Christmas period, we know that for a fact we will have several challenges, and therefore we will be partnering with the public and with other law enforcement agencies, including the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, and even private security firms that assist us to treat with this upcoming Christmas. We have decided to put together structured patrols to treat with areas, in particular residential areas. As you are well aware, there have been an avalanche of home invasions occurring throughout the nation, and this has attracted the attention of the majority of the public and the TTPS, and we intend to take serious action against that. People have been complaining about the response of staff members at our charge rooms and on the streets. We have been engaging programs to sensitize our officers as to how to treat the public, to be very sensitive to their needs, to their concerns, to their reports, and to treat with courtesy and dispatch as to the reports that they receive. We then set up response teams so there will be immediate responses to robberies, which may occur in several districts, several divisions, so that persons will not have to rely strictly on our NN9, but there will be other response teams put into these divisions to respond to reports of robberies. Increasing foot patrols. And we want to recognize that foot patrols have been sort of slightly absent in some areas. We have done our homework, we have done our analysis, we have targeted several areas where we intend to put foot patrols on the ground. We are currently asking persons to become aware of the several new initiatives TTPS have been involved in. For example, the TTPS app. I've asked for a response from the persons who are so engaged to supervise that particular initiative to give me a report as to how that has been going on with the public. Some persons have their issues concerning how the app is operated, and we intend to launch a further campaign again to sensitize persons as to the importance of the app and its use. Neighborhood watches. We'll be meeting with several persons in certain areas to engage in the neighborhood watches. As well aware, some persons have started neighborhood watches without the inclusion of TTPS and law enforcement. We will be meeting with those persons to ensure that when these neighborhood watches are engaged, that it has the blessings and all the protocols, so that no laws will be breached. When we reflect on recently, there was an issue where a certain individual who is alleged would have been involved in some sexual activity with a young person was lynched. We do not want to have lynch mobs in certain areas, and you call it a neighborhood watch. Business persons. Clearly, we need to meet with some of the business persons who have their concerns and to find ways and means to address these concerns. We recognize that several business places will be the victims of robberies, and we tend to curtail that. If we can limit every single robbery, we'll make every effort to do that. However, we need the collaboration. It is really heart-rending to hear business persons attempting to travel from their business to the banks and to their homes with large sums of money. With large sums of money, when we have the advantage of engaging in services of security firms and even trying to build a police service. Many years ago, that was a mandate given to the public that you could seek the assistance of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to assist you in escorting the large sums of money to the safety of the banks on a police escort. But somehow some business people have decided that it wasn't worth their while, and they suffer the disadvantage of being robbed. And then it's our job now to find out who the person who committed the robbery and to try to solve that crime. Soft targets. We intend to look at all the soft targets, persons who are clearly the victims that are on the target of the would-be perpetrators. To minimize that, we need to sensitize those soft targets to ensure that they engage in the right sort of protection, what we call a hardening of the target, so they will minimize their risk of being robbed. The elderly in society. We plan to put together a mandate. We will engage our community policing to start seeking out our senior citizens, retired senior citizens, persons who have worked in the public sector and the private sector, to engage those persons and let them be aware that we will be in touch with them, we communicate with them on a daily basis or weekly basis, so that we have some sort of communication. Recent surveys have shown that some of these persons are being abandoned even by their very families, and we need to have that sort of interaction. And it must not only be TTPS alone, because I always say that law enforcement and engaging in any sort of crime reduction initiative is not a spectator sport. It requires persons to be involved. It requires the public to be involved. It requires you, the media, to also be involved in this particular initiative. And that's why we're asking all partners, all stakeholders, to partner with us in this foregoing initiative. Recently, we celebrated the Duality Celebration. And here again, we saw a young child was injured with fireworks. Over the years, several campaigns have been held instructing persons who engage in the discharge of fireworks at their homes or wherever of the safety precautions, and they need to have the certain safety things and measures in place to ensure no one is injured. Yet here it is, we have a young child injured because of fireworks. So we are launching a campaign also in each station district to do their own research and to do their patrols to locate persons who will be harboring en masse, who don't have a requisite license to store. Because these are explosives, fireworks are explosives. We have history of fireworks setting houses afire and causing injury to other persons, to animals, to elderly persons, citizens who cannot tolerate the noise. So clearly there's a lot of work which will be ongoing. The traffic branch will be engaged in our exercise, our initiative. So there'll be several roadblocks, and we call it targeted strategic roadblocks. The roadblocks will be characteristic of several persons being on board to ensure that every area will be thoroughly checked, in particular vehicles, occupants, and the case may be. We are trying to move away from the ad hoc method of doing roadblocks where a person was just stopped and checked for the particulars. The roadblocks will be more intent, and we're kindly asking John public to be sensitive to us and to be very patient. The simple area of us giving you a bit of inconvenience can prevent you from being convenienced severely down the road. So do not look at the police engaging in a roadblock exercise and do not thorough check as an inconvenience to you. The car behind you might be the car following you to commit a robbery. And because of the police conducting that road check, you, your family, the lives could have been saved. Or the money you have in your possession, or whatever worthy possession you have, will be saved because of the police conducting intense roadblocks. So clearly, the whole initiative is to ensure that the public partner with the police, clearly understand we have a mission ahead. The mission requires all persons working together, sharing of information. So many years ago in the US, when there was an avalanche in crime, in particular in New York, there was a mantra: you see something, say something. That should be applied here, especially with the upcoming Christmas period. You see something, say something. You see someone wearing a mask, tell them put on the mask. Several times I've driven across Independence Square, and clearly I have demarked that particular area. The area east of Cipriani Circle all the way to the cathedral. Traverse that particular area anytime at night from, let's say, 5:30 after hours. Most of the persons in that area who congregate are in breach of the COVID regulations. So we have not put in place measures to issue tickets to every single individual in that area who's found not wearing a mask. We need to take this COVID measure seriously. There's no way, no how we could escape it. COVID is here with us. And if we don't adhere to the regulations, we could end up like countries abroad, where the COVID virus now is out of control. We are thankful that our medical system isn't taxed and overwhelmed at this present time and can still accommodate. Almost every day, we have returning residents by 100 plus, every single day coming in through our airport, and we have to escort those persons and ensure they are safely taken to wherever they go through the quarantine issues, they spend the days to ensure that they are checked by doctors before they are allowed to move on into the public, go to their homes. Those are things that a lot of members of the public are unaware of. We see that to patrol the beaches, as the commissioner said, and that's not a one-on, one-off. Every single day, we have a mandate to ensure that we have some sort of law enforcement coverage at our beaches, at our rivers, where people tend to frequent, And we still have to ensure that we have persons within the rural areas to provide the safety cover for our shoppers, for business owners, and still ensure there's coverage in the residential areas where persons leave their homes unattended. Taxi stands where persons drop off and drop on points. We have to ensure that those areas are properly covered. The PS drivers, we have engaged persons to monitor PS drivers to get certain information so that we can be fully aware. So if a report is made, we don't have to go looking. Our data reflect who is the owner, who the driver of that particular vehicle wants to get the information. So there are a lot of efforts being made, and as time progresses on, we'll continue to modernize and to increase and improve our product, that is our law enforcement. So again, I want to sincerely ask that the members of the public appreciate our initiative, our drive, cooperate with us. Our attempt to regain that public confidence is an ongoing issue, and we intend to pursue it to the hilt. So we kindly asking that you continue to share with us, partner with us, buy in to what we have to sell, so that we could have a better country, a safer country, Trinidad and Tobago, as time goes by. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Just before the questions, we'd like to just go quickly to the Officer of the Week. On October 29th, civilian Marcus Ash was on his way to Port of Spain. The vehicle in which he was traveling ended up behind a police motorcyclist in the Chaguanas area. The individual became highly annoyed because he knew that the driver would stay well below the speed limit, and he, Ash, was already late. To make matters worse, the highway was already congested with so many vehicles. Then came that moment when Mr. Ash saw something that he had never seen before. The officer on the motorbike began moving through the lanes and instructed every single heavy T vehicle to move across to the left lane where they're supposed to be and stay there, except if they intended to overtake. As every driver complied, the other two lanes became clearer. This process continued all the way to Beetham Highway. To Ash's surprise, all vehicles were able to maintain the speed limit, and they got to Port of Spain in a very decent time frame. Mr. Ash would like to thank the officer for what he had done that day. Quote, "Whoever you are, officer, I know it's not an easy job and it can be a thankless journey, but thank you is the least I can do. Blessings." That officer is PC Stephen Clark from the motorcycle unit of the Highway and Traffic Patrol Aranguez unit. I would like to now send congratulations to PC Clark, the DCP, Intelligence and Investigations, DCP Jacob. Can you please do the honors? Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, I'll now open questions to the media, please.
Good afternoon. Tarian Brown, TTT News. I'd like you to outline some of the measures that the TTPS would like to see made to the anti-gang legislation to make it more effective.
Well, no, it's already drafted, so I would not want to reinvent the wheel. What I can state, again, going back to the start, if we look at comparison to other countries, it is chalk and cheese. There are certain things that is very soft, but it is better than nothing. It would be a big setback if it is that something, a bill like this is going to collapse. It is better that we have at least what is there now, but as I said, the main thing people speak about is to infringe on the rights of others. But if you look at this similar law in North America, as I said, certain persons who have been charged, they cannot associate, they cannot communicate, they cannot text, they cannot go in certain bars, certain streets, certain corners. It may seem draconian, but it has proven to be very effective by dismantling gangs. Personally, I would love to do that. The main thing is to dismantle gangs. If we can dismantle gangs, it will be much easier for me to get to my threshold of making sure that there's a 10% decrease in every violent crime every year. This year, there's been a 25 to 35% decrease in every violent crime in this country. Murders, rapes, kidnapping, grievous bodily harm, car thefts, armed robbery, even road deaths, woundings and shootings. But as I said, the gang-related activity has proven to be the catalyst towards violent crime. So yes, there would be other things that should be put in, but at this time, I think that is not on the table. What is on the table is the present legislation that it has been used, and it has proven to be effective by 88 persons in the last few years being arrested for it. And many of those 88 persons, had they remained on the streets without such legislation, this could have resulted in numerous other deaths taking place. So I think it is important. I'm just asking that what is there on the table at this time be considered strongly, and we have 41 persons put country first.
There are a number of local music videos circulating on social media displaying firearms. Is the TTPS investigating whether these firearms are dummies or if they're real firearms? Is there any investigation underway?
Yeah, definitely. Through the revamped cybercrime unit, we look at every single incident. On some occasions, they are not legitimate. They're not, but we look at every single one. We look through the cybercrime, and on most occasions, we find the individuals, and then we track to see where this firearm was. So that is being done.
Hi, good day, Ryan Hamilton Davis, Trinidad Newsday. Well, I want to continue with the anti-gang legislation and move on from there. Now, regarding to some of the pushback being placed by government officers, members of the parliament and stuff already, don't want to put you in any kind of trouble for you to say something out of
Thank you.
But there has been reports, well, several reports of there being a connection to people in politics and people in gangs, you know, whether through the awarding of contracts, etc., etc. All right. The question is, do you think that there is a correlation, a similar correlation between the pushback against the anti-gang bill and these things, or would you be in a position to speculate on that?
No, well, I definitely wouldn't go into where angels fear to tread by accusing politicians. But worldwide has been seen that when these gangs escalate and they build, it is just like the pyramid scheme. When they continue to expand, they get their fingers into the police service, where they start buying out police officers, members of the criminal justice system, politicians. It has been proven. And again, likewise, we have seen situations where gangs have been getting state contracts for years. And I have stood firm on this even when I was in another place. Because when you play with filthy animals, you would get fleas. There is going to be a price to pay. So my concept of this is to shut it down, dismantle them, take away, cut that financial umbilical cord. It is going to cripple them. It is an art of war. If it is that you have an enemy head on, before you fire the first round, you try to cripple their financial, their administrative, their logistic supply. You can't be fighting a battle and then they're getting state contracts. That is something separate and apart to the bill itself. We need to shut down the gangs and dismantle it. So yes, there have been situations with persons that may be perceived, whether it is in the criminal justice system, the law enforcement agencies, and even persons in politics that have some degree of affiliation. How great it is, how much we have investigated on it, obviously I wouldn't be able to give further comment on that.
All right. One of the things you mentioned with the expanding of gangs was the bringing in of firearms, high-powered weapons, and so on. A couple of months ago, DCP Jacob, he mentioned that there has been an increase in the discovery or in the retrieval or seizure of firearms, of high-powered weapons, and he raised it as a concern. Can we get an update on the efforts being made to stymie the flow of these firearms, these high-powered weapons? And can you explain, even if it's in detail, further detail, the connection between those two?
Yeah, sure. There was an article a few days ago on that same matter, when it is, even though there's a reduction in firearms being seized, you were getting an escalation in wounding, shooting / murders because of the type of firearm. And again, it goes right back to the politicians. It is amazing that when you're on the right side of the Speaker of the House, you saw the value of the bail amendment bill with a sidearm. But then when you go on the left side of the Speaker, somebody could have an assault rifle that can kill 35 persons in 3 seconds, and you see no justification why that person should remain in prison. It is amazing. Ethics, logic, character, it just goes out the window when you just shift from one side of the parliamentary bench to the other. It shouldn't. It's the same logic you had pre-2015 to make sure that if somebody has an assault rifle, that in other countries, someone found with an assault rifle is deemed a terrorist because that person can kill 30 or 40 persons within seconds. Here you're saying, no, he has his fundamental right to be free. And by doing that now, he can go back and purchase another firearm, which is what happens. So someone is found with, say, 9 assault rifles, and the assault rifles dismantled. Some smart people say, well, it's not really an assault rifle because they weren't all assembled. So it's just like if somebody has a detonator, a timer, and the chemicals, and it's separate. It's, well, it's not a bomb, so we should let him free. That is what we have to deal with. And then when they go free and they assemble everything and they kill persons, guess who they blame? So we need to understand the fact that with the assault rifles coming in, it is coming in. There's been, obviously, you'll see many, we have seized many more. Most of the murders now is because, with gangs is because of the assault rifles. And that's why you had an increase in woundings and shootings a few years ago, because most of the criminal elements will be using the sidearm. A sidearm, there's a strong possibility that the person can survive. When you have an assault rifle that you're firing 5.56 rounds and you could fire off 10 in a few seconds, there's very little chance for survival, which is why we have to put systems in place. My personal view is, as it pertains to the illegal entry of weapons and drugs, there's a strong perception of the illegal ports of entry, but we have discovered through our international allies that the bulk of the illegal drugs and weapons coming into the country is from the legitimate ports of entry. And it means that it puts the police in a very difficult position because we are not allowed to go on the ports. We have no say, no involvement. So when we seize 800 firearms for the year, if one container leaves a legitimate port not checked, you can have 1,000. So in one night, if you have an insecure, legitimate port of entry, we can now lose all of the value we have done for the whole year in seizing illegal firearms, which I think with the privatization of the port, it can give the police some degree of authority to make sure that we can guard the guards, because that concern of the legitimate ports of entry with these illegal weapons coming in, it is a matter of concern.
Wow, that's a lot to unbox right there. Just to tack onto that really quick, you said that a lot of the murders are now connected to high-powered rifles and automatic weapons and stuff like that. You have any figures on that
I can get that to you before within an hour.
All right, no problem. And just to go around that and to ask the third question, basically on the anti-gang bill, we see a lot. We're hearing a lot from you about these gangs being having a structure. All right, and well, it seems like you kind of comparing them to Medellin gangs, the Russian gangs with all the human trafficking and all those stuff like that. At what state, from the intelligence that you have right now, are gangs are they that organized? Should we be that concerned that they are that organized?
No, well, again, looking at what we have seen for the last several months, there seems to be a lull in gang warfare between rival gangs. Thankfully, I think again, when you look back, at crime in this country, we try to give the excuse for different things to justify when things go good. Had crime increased, persons would not have said it was because of COVID. Now that crime has decreased, they are trying to say it is because of COVID. You look at North America, the majority of cities, every crime has increased. So I think one of the reasons, apart from good policing, the public buying into the fact and working with the police service, we have also seen a lull in gang-related warfare and confrontation, which obviously it is good. It means that there's dialogue. There's dialogue that the police would have with gangs by not recognizing them and calling them community leaders and giving them state contracts, but by warning them, working with them, speaking to them and letting them know. Some of these gang leaders, let me clarify here, these gangs, they are not dumb. In fact, it's just the opposite. Some of these young men who are gang leaders have tremendous intelligence, and if they use their resources, the leadership that they have in the communities for good, it can transform their community. But unfortunately, some of them use it to build their empire. Some of them have a building in a community that their house alone could be worth more than about 50 or 100 houses around the community. So it is not a Robin Hood where people try to get this perception, I'm here to protect this guy and give him information and to fight and to give my life for him. If it is that the gang leaders, which has happened in some cities in North America, the gang leaders started turning and started realizing, look, I have a degree of respect and people have belief in me in this community. Let me use it for good rather than evil. Let me try to build the community rather than try to challenge other communities to get their state contracts and to go and kill other gang members because they have different names. If we can continue to move along as what we have done here, we can continue to cut violent crime by 15 to 25% every year, we can be somewhere within where we were at the turn of this century. But again, the gang members, they have a big part to play in the gang activity. How it is we reduce it? I do not want to have to reduce it by confrontation and head-on. Hopefully, good sense would prevail by persons who are gang members understanding that this is not the way to go. And the police service, we are doing a lot to try. It's not just about hard targeting, roadblocks, patrols, confrontation, operation. We have something that is known as secondary crime prevention, where we are trying to get young persons to turn away from a life of crime through social development, playing sports, and community work to get persons to realize, they say narrow is the path that leads to righteousness, but broad is the way that leads to destruction. A lot of these young men, they see the easy access through a gang and try to make quick money, and it can lead to their death. If it is that you take that narrow path, it may be tough, but at least it is that something that your parents could be proud of.
All right, just 2 quick questions on DSS. You answered a lot of the questions I had before, but what I wanted to find out, in your investigations, to find out whether or not any of this money that was seized was illegal, was gained by illegal means or any kind of thing. Has the police, with the assistance of all the external factors, been able to determine thus far that any of this these funds are gained illegally?
No, I wouldn't answer that. But again, let's just go back to the 22 million that was seized in the first occasion. 22 million divided that by 10,000 each year. So show me a receipt. I need to see 2,200 receipts of persons who actually deposited $10,000. Okay. If you don't show me that, and again, if I get any receipts, because what we noticed was very interesting is that the receipts were less like automatic. All the names and how it was written was it was like a flow. If I have to check 2,200 people and verify that they deposited $10,000, so be it. But if I don't get it, well, then I will move to another direction. I am dealing with this with a fine-tooth comb. And in local parlance, anybody in this country who's upset of how the police is launching this investigation, they could express themselves all they want to blow the trumpet of DSS. I am not changing. In local parlance, who vex loss. We are launching a thorough investigation to make sure that no crime is being committed.
All right, and final question, I'll pass it to the striker. The DSS last week, they sent a release which is now being shared on social media to advise people who took part in the scheme that they may be able to retrieve the money through applying through the Proceeds of Crime Act. There's a specific form pursuant to Section 38(7)(a), where they say you can make an application for the cash under subsection 7. And there may be some kind of determination by the judge concerning that.
Yeah, I am not going to try to even justify, clarify, or give any relevance to the organizers of drugs, Susu. We have our job to do. Drugs, Susu. He has his.
All right, so this in no way affects your investigation?
Our investigation is going on just as it is. No one external to this investigation is going to try to influence, compromise, or put pressure on me in any way to alter how this investigation is going.
All right, excellent.
Good day, Commissioner, Acting DCPs. Darren Baho, also from the Newsday. I'd like to focus still on the anti-gang legislation and the public plea by the police service to the politicians to support this piece of legislation, which you have said has proven to be successful in terms of dismantling some gangs. Can you give an estimation as to how many criminal gang members there are spread across Muslims, Rasta City, anybody gets it, and Sixers in this country? And how many of those are among the 88 arrested and charged before the court?
No, I think it was given. I think this was given before by a previous minister, but I will try to refrain from going overboard and give numbers. Because remember, when you start giving numbers, everything that we have is intelligence. If it is that, then person will say, well, if you know that there are 5,000 gang members, why don't you arrest them? So it is always based on intelligence. There are also subsets of gang members. if, for example, a politician gives a gang member a major state contract, is he or she seen as a gang member? The persons who, with all the things with live sport, where they were gangs that had massive contracts from live sport, would you look at all the individuals in live sport? So, I mean, you could spread it. Do you have direct and indirect partners? Do you have silent partners? So we have a comprehensive list, but I think it would be inappropriate for me to look and give you data of possible numbers and so forth. It will just be opening up Pandora's box. What we look at more than anything else would be the big fish, those persons who hold strategic positions of influence in these gangs. They are carefully monitored. We look at what it is they do, how they operate, and we'll continue to act along that line. Yes, so we are aware that there are gangs, there are break-offs of gangs now as well, where some of them now break because they feel that they've become too big and they do not want to affiliate with the two major gangs, and that has also caused confrontation, fighting for turf, fighting for state contracts. So we do monitor these things carefully. We have a comprehensive list. Thankfully, because of reigniting the National Operation Intelligence and Fusion Center by the Minister of National Security, it has provided a greater degree of communication and collaboration between the different arms of intelligence in national security, inclusive of the SSA, the Defense Force Intelligence Unit, even the prisons have their intelligence unit, and then also from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, where we have several different intelligence agencies, inclusive of the SIU and the Special Branch.
Right, having already talked about the big fish, recently there was the death of a big fish in sea lots, arising out of COVID complications. And from what I understand, there's been a shift in power to other gang members who are now fighting for control of turf within the Rasta City gangs. This big fish was facilitated from a number of years by a politician, and even found himself in the president's house. You said that you are aware that politicians somehow with the state contracts and so forth, but these same politicians are the ones who you are now relying on passing this legislation to support the police service. Isn't there some kind of conflict of interest there? How do you address that?
Well, the conflict of interest is not for me. I have been straightforward from day one, even when I was National Security Advisor to Security Minister to Commissioner of Police, that I stand firm that you must not affiliate yourself with criminal elements. There's going to be a price to pay. We should not in any way condone, support, or indirectly. I fought in cabinet over it. I fought in cabinet when I heard persons trying to justify that, let us do that to calm it down. There's going to be a price to pay. It is going to escalate to the point that you cannot control them. That is what happened in live sport. And we have seen it over and over. You can't feed the animal and then expect that you could control the animal. The animal is now going to turn back on you. And that is where it is. We had the problem with live sport when it was then handed over to me as Minister of National Security to put an end to it because it had reached a point of no return. And that is where it was immediately shut down when I became Minister of National Security. So nothing has changed. All I can do is to plead and hope that 41 persons would do the right thing and to ensure that it gives the police a fighting chance to protect citizens of this country come Friday.
All right, I just want to shift a bit to, you said that you're going to, from Monday, every officer will get pepper spray, and you intend to buy body cameras for, you didn't say a number, but I think you said previously 1,000 body cameras for the tactical units and so forth. Did you get some subvention ahead of to buy these things?
I have to go and get a loan. No, there's actually been there was over $220 million that did not come to the police service that we had requested for the last fiscal year. And even with we had a budget allocation of over 300 million. So we actually saved 100 million last year of money that we didn't spend. But 200 million did not come to us. Because of that, we are in debt of over $200 million. It is hurting us. Thankfully, the Minister of Finance, he has understood the situation because the 200 million we sent in bills and invoices that did not, and it was within the $300 million budget. We did not get it, so all of our suppliers from maintenance of vehicles, electricity, maintenance of the buildings, equipment, it has pegged us back. But as I said, if I get $1, I intend to do what I have to do with it, without affecting the operational capability of the police service. So I am speaking to the Minister of Finance and the Minister of National Security. I would find a way. I give the assurance to the public, come Monday, every police officer would have pepper spray. And hopefully in the next month or two, likewise with the body cameras and also with tasers. Not for every police officer, but definitely every officer who goes out on the street, it will become standard operational procedure. You must, when you walk that street, you must turn on your body camera and you must have that taser.
Okay, I want to touch on a subject that you're very passionate about, police killings. In last month, the Police Complaints Authority would have completed 2 significant investigations and submitted their findings to the Office of the DPP. One of them involves the killing of 5 men in Laventille, which occurred shortly after he took office in 2018. And the other one, which sparked days of protests across Port of Spain and other areas in June 27th, where 3 men were killed by police officers in Mova. Where has the police reached in their investigations? And now that the PCA has found, I would say, sufficient evidence to submit a file with recommendations for possible charges to the DPP, has that changed your outlook or advice to police officers who are out on the field?
Not at all. The fact is, you have to look at every single investigation on its merit, because you also have to look. You know, we look at the number of police officers, of police killings and police shootings, but we have not looked at the fact that every 4 to 5 days a police officer is shot at. If there's been an increase in the number of people who shoot at police officers, obviously there's going to be an increase in the number of police officers who shoot back. Prior to my tour of duty, there was this perception by many police officers that if they're getting shot at, they are. You recall there was a situation in Shogunas, I think, and for about 5 hours, we were something like a part of Jamaica, where shots were firing and police officers, they did not want to go inside there because, I don't know, whether it is leadership or concern that they would not be defended by their leader. That is not happening on my watch. Anytime anyone feels that they can control a block or alley and feel that they could fire upon, I am going in there from the front, real close and personal, and we will deal with any criminal element that feel that they can control any territory and fire at police officers. You shoot at police officers anywhere in the world, they would retaliate, and they would retaliate with making sure that that the threat is neutralized. And that is what I have given my officers an instruction, and that instruction is straightforward. This is worldwide. When every single person has a firearm user's license, it is to do the same thing. If you shoot at me, I would shoot back. It has absolutely nothing to do with extrajudicial killings or police officers abusing their authority by excessive force. Totally different things. So that's the point. If there are 1, 2, 3, 5 situations, it is not going to cause me to tell police officers, do not fire back, do not fire at persons to defend yourself or to defend the lives of others. So you can't look at 1 or 2 situations, and up to now, those situations are not even before the courts. They're not even thoroughly investigated to verify if it is that the police officers abuse their authority or not. So let us not have some kind of anticipate something before it even arrives. But it must not in any way have a police officer second guess the time that he may need to draw his firearm. And I'll give you an example, Darren. Let us, and I will ask you, if it is that you are a police officer and a man is coming up to you and he's drawing his firearm and he's aiming it at you, I want you to think of how it is you're going to react. What you'll do?
Probably run.
No, you're a police officer. You're not going to run. You're a police officer.
Well, if I'm armed,
too late,
Darren.
Darren.
If I'm armed, I will respond.
Darren, too late, you're dead. It takes 1 second thinking. You start down there to analyze for about a few seconds what you're going to do. And it takes 1 second for a police officer to make the wrong decision. 1 second. When a man draws a firearm, the media and the public could sit down, sift, analyze all the different things that the officer could and could not have done. The officer who's out there putting his life on the line for every citizen out there, he has 1 second to make that decision. That 1 second of the wrong decision, which can take place. And you know why? Because it just dawned on me that a police officer is human, just like us. But we can all sit back and analyze Mova, analyze Laventille, and sit back and look at all the different things. Because in the court now, this will take several months to ascertain if he did the right thing. But he has 1 second to make that decision. And it has happened worldwide. That is why we have something I would like to invite the media, and I'd love to test you all on it. It's something called a simulation theater. The simulation theater will have an individual will come up to you, and it's a screen, and you have to know when to use your firearm. And I can assure you, all of you all will fail. But because of its training. The person will come to you and do this, and then after you fire, he's pulling out his cell phone to call his attorney. Likewise, the officer might hold back and he pulls it out and it is a firearm and the officer is killed. So it is a 1-second decision the officer has to make. So we can easily sit down and speak PCA and DPP and commissioner and charges and police killings and have these people jumping up and down. But the officers out there, their lives are on the line and they have 1 second to make that decision if to draw their firearm or not. And that's why sometimes cut us a little bit of slack to understand that they are human out there and they're under siege by criminal elements. And if people draw firearms, they would fire back. But there are times they may make a mistake. And if they make the mistake, that is the tough job here. They would face the consequences. But let us take it on a case-by-case basis and not draw a blanket on the police service if there are 1 or 2 situations where they did not do it when they went overboard.
This is a question for Acting DCP James. Mr. James, you were appointed to lead the tribunal, the investigation against ACP Hackshaw, who is due to leave the service in 13 days' time. Can you give us an update as to what exactly you did and where that matter is reached? And would Mr. Hackshaw sail off into the sunset without facing the full disciplinary process?
What I can say at this time is that the file recently came into my possession. I'm in the process of currently doing a total review of the file, a total assessment, and it may engage persons who would have been involved in the initial investigation prior to it coming in my possession, having discussions with them. So at this stage, this is where it is. I'm not at liberty to volunteer any further information on the investigation, but what I can say is, yes, it is in my possession, and I have been engaging with certain persons in furtherance to that investigation. And that's most I can say at this time.
Good afternoon, Commissioner, DCP James, DCP Jacobs, or Rishi from TV6.
Yes.
Commissioner, when you were talking about the anti-gang legislation, you mentioned the proliferation of assault rifles. If I may ask, what is the main countries of origin for these types of rifles?
North American? Yeah, North American.
North American. So,
And we have specific places. So we work closely with the DEA, the FBI, other intelligence agencies. In fact, I'm leaving here. I have a meeting at the U.S. Embassy shortly. So we work closely with the U.S. to pinpoint the locations and how it is shipped. And that is where, again, it comes from, not the aircraft, but from shipment. And that's why that goes, the Point Lisas, the King's Wharf, the Queen's Wharf, CARICOM jetty. We need to have a strong input to ensure, because there's no police and there's no involvement. We cannot go anywhere near there. That's like an embassy. We cannot touch there. If it is that we're in hot pursuit and someone runs in there, we'll probably be told that we can't follow. That is how serious it is. So we need to get some degree of involvement to guard the guards. The same way it is that the police, we are monitored by PC and other organizations. If you have an area of a port like that, and items can come. I think we actually have reports, and you can confirm that there are certain containers that have left the port and have been unchecked, and they cannot find these containers. So if you cannot find a container that left your port, God knows what was in that container. And one container can hold over 1,000 assault rifles, where we will see, which will be more than what we seized for the whole year. So if containers have gone missing from the port, then we can we spend so much time speaking about the Coast Guard and blaming the Coast Guard and the radar and OPVs and all of that. All that is well and good, because that has proven to be that we need that to prevent especially illegal immigrants entering the country, so that, as I said, Maracas will not look like Caracas. But the main thing is that the legitimate ports of entry, it has been the problem.
You seem to mention or feel that the privatization will include more involvement for the police. Are you part of the dialogue with respect to privatization? Have you expressed this at all?
No, I'm not a politician. That is not my business. But what usually happens in ports around the world, when it is privatized, you usually have something that will have a similar manner of a joint operational unit. You'll have customs, immigration, Coast Guard, the police service. They all will be part of that homeland security type system, and not just one unit being there. And then you have unions dictating the pace, and the police and the other institutions have no involvement. So usually when you have privatization, I am not here to direct how the government will do this, but hopefully when you have privatization, it takes away the whole that unions select and tell you, anybody who comes in here, I must give you authorization. So the police cannot enter because of what a union may think, or certain workers, or even a certain arm of the of not even, of national security. So usually privatization, it opens the window of opportunity to make sure that ports can be more secure.
As we're talking about illegal immigration, we've seen that increase in Trinidad and Tobago over the past 2 to 3 years. Could you tell us what impact that has had, immigration, on crime? Are you seeing immigrants involved in crime? What types of crime, etc.?
Yeah, definitely. Within the last year or two, there have been about kind of 20 odd deaths of persons who have been illegal immigrants. Some of them have assault rifles. They've confronted the police officers. We have retaliated. Some of them are involved they have pushed their way into some of these gangs, especially in the Western Peninsula. You recall the shooting in Glencoe and other places. So we have seen persons outside of Trinidad and Tobago coming into Trinidad and Tobago and trying to actually familiarize themselves or be part of these gangs. Sometimes they become competitive to the gang members, and the gang members here will deal with them. Some of them have proven to be a conduit towards financing and loans and drugs coming in with the gang members. So our intelligence has proven that it must not be seen in any way for the country to label, demonize, or cast a brush across every single person you see that may be deemed from South America or wherever. It doesn't work that way. That is where it is you call profiling. So this should not be based on profiling, but it is not that every single person that has come across there has proven to be of value and asset to Trinidad and Tobago. We monitor it closely. The good thing is that through our intelligence agencies, if we pick up individuals like this, the Minister of National Security has the authority, if it is that we submit information to him, that someone can be deported if he is deemed as A, a threat to national security, or B, a liability to the public purse. And we would act along that line.
Are there any challenges involved in dealing with immigrants who may have committed crime as opposed to nationals?
Yes, well, there is. Sometimes they commit crime, then remember, you go to the immigration detention center. At times it is that we might just look to deport them. And then even when it is you arrest them, then you have, so there have been some technicalities. Obviously, if someone, many of them who are here without the registration, they have now breaking the law because they are here illegally. When they're here illegally now, we have to find them, then hold them, and then try to get them back across to Venezuela or wherever. So it is very expensive as well. If someone is from, say Africa, it will cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars because even special branch officers now have to escort that individual on an aircraft back to his home country. It is a very delicate situation, very costly, but it is something that we have to do.
With respect to the incident captured on camera in Moruga, where we saw 2 persons supposedly of Venezuelan nationality evading police, there seemed to be an impression that it's not just that the police were forceful. It seemed, I guess the question was, what did they do to warrant this?
Yeah, and that's the point. No one knew, but remember, the people with their phones, the people didn't do anything. Leave them alone. Why are you harassing them? So you do not know what the police are arresting you for. The police could very well, these individuals, when police hold someone, it could be information that we had that this person raped a minor. This person is involved in selling drugs in your community. You do not know. So instead of putting on your camera and screaming that the man did nothing wrong, you are not an investigating officer. You do not know. I certainly wouldn't bother to mention at this time because these individuals, we are doing all required to find these individuals. But when it is the police arrest you, if the police hold you based on you littering on the street, you can't use that as an opportunity to slap a police officer. If it is that we are telling you need to come with us, you come with the police officers. You comply and then complain. If it is that they retaliate, that is where we have this confrontation. I need to do some proper training in unarmed conflict to get all police officers to understand. The first thing you do is to take down the individual, put them to the ground. We did a presentation here recently, and we showed it. Those officers need those 3 officers didn't get it right. The officers had a right to restrain, put the person down on the ground, and then after a true minimum use of force, if they retaliate, that is where the pepper spray would come in. But you can't automatically start stating that the police officers, they had no right to do that because the persons did nothing wrong. No one here knew what these individuals did. So at times it could be something very serious. And if it is the police arrest someone and there was no reason to, well then we would accept the consequences, but you will comply and listen to the police officer. You're not going to stand up there, confront the police officer because in your perception you did nothing wrong. Because when you do that now, even if you did not do anything wrong, you are now going to be charged for resisting arrest. I ask the public, please go ahead with it. And this nonsense of everyone in the public persons taping and knowing that the individuals being held did nothing wrong. You do not know. Just let it happen. And the individual who is held, if wrongfully accused and arrested, he will have his day in court to be able to take action on the same police service.
So you are unable to tell us what the infringement or
no, I wouldn't do that at this time.
Persons who were cheering them on, run faster, whatever, can they be charged for aiding and abetting someone? I don't know.
Yeah, well, there's inciting, but I think more important than persons inciting, it has showed where we have reached as a society. When we have reached as a society that a commissioner could find dozens of elderly persons in a cage being treated like animals and persons are upset and offended by the police rescuing these persons. When we have reached a point now where someone can form a scheme with tens of millions of dollars and people are saying leave the man with his money. When we have reached a point where someone is resisting arrest and people are deciding to incite to the fact that trying to get someone to escape. We have reached a point now and we need to draw that line in the sand in this country of good versus evil, right versus wrong, police versus thief. And you need to decide which side you want to be on. You look at social media, certain persons, all they do is attack and show their hatred for the police. So you know which side of defense they're on. People need to decide which side of defense you want to be on. It doesn't mean the police service is perfect, but we are the front line to try to protect you. So if it is you're trying to be excited and cheer on, it shows where we have reached as a society. The people who did that, could you really look at your children or your family and feel pleased by what you did? Or unless your family or your children operate in the same manner. That is the key in our society, that we've reached a point where people are now pleased to see people break the law. And that is where it is. We need to draw that line and decide which side of defense you're on.
Commissioner, I just want to talk back on two quick things. While the focus has been on DSS for some time now in the public domain and the police service, there are several other SUSUs, pyramid schemes, openly advertising their services to the public. And as you know, there are a number of people who are now jobless because of the COVID restrictions for a lot of businesses, and these people are now trying to get a quick turnover with whatever savings they have. There's that, and whether or not the police would now be focusing on those other operators. And the second thing I want to ask is, Robert Clark, a highly decorated FBI agent who was instrumental in dismantling gangs in the US, he had been recruited by the police service to assist in this whole dismantling of gangs in Trinidad. Where is he, and is he still a consultant with the police service?
Yeah, okay. What's the first question? What's the first question? Right. Going back with every single investigation, again, it'll be based on merit. So we've been seeing many advertisements, and we are checking each and every one. There's a difference to a SUSU and a pyramid scheme. This is not a SUSU. A SUSU is, I put $1,000 for 12 months, I will get $12,000 at the end of the year. Put in 10,000 to get 50,000 without putting 50,000 is not a SUSU. The public is being misled and fooled by devious people who are trying to play. SUSU is something from the days of these older people, like these two fellows here, right? Not me. And that is what they did. The days of SUSU, you all grab and you take money every month, and then if you get your hand, you will get it before everyone else. But you still have to put in exactly what it is. What you get in is what you have to put out. This is not a SUSU. This is a pyramid scheme that is designed, and it is inevitable it would collapse. So people may be promoting a SUSU. That is fine. If it is that you're involved in money lending, there are specific regulations and documents you must have registered, and if you don't, then we can take action. But we are not going to have people fool the country into believing that you're using SUSU as a front when you're involved in a money laundering or possible pyramid scheme that can cause the loss of tens of thousands of persons losing money. As it pertains to Mr. Clark, Mr. Clark, he went back to LA just before the shutdown. and he is still working closely with the business sector, and hopefully in the very near future he would return, but until then he's still liaising a lot with us to assist us dealing with the problems as it pertains to gang-related activity. That's it. Okay, thank you very much.